Over the last few years, I've been working alongside doing stand-up. I've been working in schools, work as a teacher's aide at different schools, been working at a bunch of schools, and I really like working with kids. I mostly work with primary school age kids, and I like it. I like it because kids say stuff that causes you to reflect on your own life. I was talking to a kid recently, and he said this thing to me. He was sitting across the other side of the room, right? He's 5 years old, this kid. And I went over to him because I saw that he was crying. He was crying. And as I got closer, I realised this kid's not just crying. Sometimes they just cry for no reason. Just whatever, I'll just have a cry. This didn't look like that. He was like shaking. He had tears all over his face. He looked really, really devastated. I started getting worried. I went over to him. I was like, what's happened? I nearly said his name just then. I shouldn't do that. I'll call him Bob because that's his name backwards. I said, Bob, what? Stupid joke. That's my favourite part of the show, and it's no one else's, but it is genuinely my favourite part. I said to him, mate, what's wrong? What's happened? Why are you crying this much? What's going on? And he looked up at me. He had tears all over his face, so earnest. He looked up at me. He picked up this pile of Lego that he'd been working on, 5 years old. He looked up at me, showed me the Lego, tears running down his face. He said, I've just built the worst train that I've ever built. How beautiful is that? How naive. Imagine if that was the scale of your problems. That's his biggest problem at that point in his life. That's his biggest drama. Isn't that incredible? That's beautiful, isn't it? But also, if that is your biggest problem, life's going to be a fucking roller coaster, isn't it, Bob? It's going to be a wild ride. Imagine when Bob goes through a breakup. Imagine that, Bob. Imagine that. You're building that train. Every day you're working on that train, tirelessly, adding block. Oh, can we build it? Can we fix it? The train starts to get a little bit derailed. You start thinking, oh, maybe if we change the train a bit, maybe if it's not like a monogamous train, maybe if every now and then other passengers get on just for a bit, a station or two, then they hop off. Maybe that'll fix the train. Turns out the blocks you were using to build that train, they never matched up in the beginning, did they, Bob? Those blocks were never meant to fit together. And then I started crying. They cause you to reflect on your own life. I love that about kids. I love that. I've just built the worst train I've ever built. When do you lose that naivety? I think for most people, that gets broken down as you become aware of the harsh realities of the world. For me, it was 3 distinct phases. It was realizing that adults can lie. They lie to you, and they do lie to you. And then realizing more specifically my parents lie to me. And then finally realizing my heroes, my childhood heroes, even they're flawed and even they lie. For me, they were the 3 things that stripped me of that naivety that I think we all sort of start off with and we all lose as we grow older. Another thing we start off with and lose as we grow older, and I love this one, is young kids there's not a word for it, they haven't lived in a society for long enough to learn social etiquette, so they're not aware of what they should and shouldn't say. They have no concept of it. As a result, they speak with pure honesty, proper pure honesty, and it's the best. I was talking to a girl recently, she's 8 years old, and she was trying to ask me how old I am. I could tell that was what she was trying to ask, but she couldn't figure out how to articulate the sentence. She was kind of dancing around it. She was like, how many ages, what are the ages of your birth? At what is it? At the year of your birth, when is the age of your... And then eventually she was just like, when are you going to die? Pure honesty. That's what we're all really asking when we ask that question, isn't it? It's beautiful. I love that. I feel like young kids don't really give that much of a shit about death. They talk about it like it's nothing. You're like, why shouldn't we run inside with scissors? Because we'll fall over, stab ourselves and die. You're like, whoa, I wasn't really going for that angle, but okay, good example. They talk about death like it's nothing. They're so blasé about it. And then also really old people are the same. They talk about death like it's nothing at the end of your life. It's only in the middle period that we get all trepidatious about talking about death. My grandpa, before he passed away, he said something that'll always stick with me. I went to visit him and he said this. He said, first he said, Lewis, I want to show you something. And he took me into his bathroom. I was like, I don't like that. That's the setting for you showing me something, Grandpa. Doesn't seem right. But then he pointed at the ground, so blasé about death. He points at the ground and he says, look at that. What am I looking at, Grandpa? Look at that. Have a look at that. Usually I get the packet of 24 toilet rolls, but this time I got the 12 pack because I figured it should probably see me out. No point wasting 12 rolls, is there, Grandpa? You're not going to leave them behind in the will. That'd be weird. They'll just go to waste. Isn't it crazy that that's what our lives come down to? Like at the end of life, that's what you're doing. You have this crazy life, you do all these things. At the end of your life, that's how you're spending your time, just guessing. Like you live your life, you do so many things, there's so much magic in life. You're a kid, oh, the magic, is Father Christmas real? You know, you learn how to do the swings for the first time without needing an adult to push you, that's magic. You get a little bit older, you're a teenager, you do drugs for the first time, that's magic. You get a bit older, you start looking at the world in a bigger way, like more than just your little bubble. You start looking at the whole world, you start having heroes, you start having icons. You see like Obama give a speech at the UN, you're like, I love that guy, he's my hero, I'm inspired by that guy. You start thinking, maybe I could change the world, maybe I could be a positive force in this world. You get a little bit older, you get a job, you start working 5 days a week, hour commute each way, you get a bit tired, the enthusiasm, the keenness, it kind of gets sapped out of you by capitalism over a period of years and years and years. Some good things happen, of course, you fall in love, but after a while the magic dies. A few years later, so does she, and then you're alone. At the end of your life, just in Coles, aisle 9, just going, how many more shits am I going to take? I want to nail this. I want to nail my shit for sheet ratio because it's my last little game on earth. That's my magic now. That's the magic I've got left at this stage. Isn't that wild? And he died before COVID. I'm so glad that he didn't live to see COVID. Because if that's the magic, if that's the last little game at that stage in your life, imagine how hard the last year's been for older individuals. Not only does the virus affect you disproportionately, you also have to watch much younger people greedily hoard the one thing that still brings you joy. That's their magic.